So welcome everyone to another Europark webinar. Today we have a very special program, 1.5 hours full and very intense. And again, the first thing you'll need is a block of paper and something to write on, because you will be asked to work this time. So this time won't be only to hear, but actually to produce. But before I introduce you to our invited speakers today, I will just like to make a short presentation about the Europark Federation, so we are all in the same page. So I'll start sharing my screen. Okay, share. So you should now see my screen. Okay, so the Europark Federation is the network of protected areas in Europe. So we work together to support parks in Europe, better protecting their nature by bringing people together. Indeed, our parks, they represent national parks, regional parks, biosphere reserves, marine protected area, peri-urban parks, Natura 2000 sites. So we are the umbrella organization that brings together professionals that works for nature. And our members are mainly protected area authorities, but also indeed any kind of national or regional government organization that is responsible for the management of nature sites. Well, we have 400 members in 40 countries in Europe and beyond Europe, and our members actually represent thousands of Natura 2000 sites and protected areas. So why were we created? We were created early in the 70s with the principle of bringing people together. By then, the political situation was very different in Europe. And so we needed a kind of international organization neutral enough that could bring together park people that were working across the borders. Germany and Czech Republic were great examples of that. They shared the same resources, the same protected area, but they didn't know what was going on the other side of the border. So it was created with the principle that nature protection is better managed through international cooperation. And well, international cooperation is exactly what we are doing today and what we do with our Europark webinars. So we kind of say that we are the premium club of protected area professionals, and we come together very often for international conferences, workshops, capacity building sessions. But well, we also make use of the online, and because of this, we are able to get insights from overseas. That's the case of today. So we come together and we exchange our experiences to better innovate together on the management of protected areas. And when I say innovation, it's because innovation is something that we all depend on. Our protected areas are within a changing climate. And we know in the past, the Europark webinars, we have been heard a lot about how can we adapt, what tools are there, what are the strategies that protected areas are using. And indeed, our protected area professionals in Europe are looking towards innovation. But sometimes we forget that innovation is not only based on an external methodology, but also on our inner change. And so that's why I'm very, very happy to introduce this webinar today, because I think for the first time, we'll not be looking at how to change others or how to get the others involved, but what are the tricks and tools that I can use with myself to empower the change that I would like to see in my protected area. So today we'll be hearing about the radical transformational leadership. It's a methodology developed around 20 years ago by a lady called Monica Sharma. Kirsten will tell us her experience in firsthand on implementing this methodology for the last 10 years in her work at the National Park Service. So thank you very much, Kirsten, first of all, for joining us today. And we'll hear also the experience of Conchi Pinheiro. Conchi will give us some insights on her work, on her personal work within Spain on climate change. How can we apply the methodology also on climate change related issues? But before we go to our invited guests, I will give the word to Marta Mujica. She is very well known in the Europark family as she is the director of Europark Spain. And Marta will frame us the question of adaptation and personal change for climate change. So without taking any longer, I give you the floor, Marta. Marta, please share your screen. No, we can't hear you. You need to unmute.
Now, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. And then I will share my screen. Let's see, technology. Is it working? Yes?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So, is in PowerPoint presentation, is okay?
Yes, you can just share start the presentation. Exactly.
Right, like this. Okay. So thank you very much and good afternoon. It was December 2019, December last year. A lot of people were, like in Madrid, in many other places in the world, asking, thinking, and talking about climate change and asking for changes. I think it was a very special moment, and we were asking for changes. We all know that change is a difficult thing, both at individual and also at institutional level. So in this webinar, I think we will learn a lot, how to change and how to act in an innovative way. We have a lot of experience from protected areas, how to deal with nature conservation, but we also know that we need to accelerate some actions to really respond in an effective way to the effects that we are already suffering from climate change. So this webinar is part of a project called Co-Adaptation. It was the title that we gave to this project, Collaborative Knowledge to Accelerate Adaptation to Climate Change. This is a project that is supported by the ministry, the Spanish Ministry for Ecological Transition. So the basic idea behind the project is that protected areas are long-term tools for nature conservation, but also for the well-being of humans. So protected areas cannot be isolated from the rest of the territory. They are influenced by the ecological processes that occur around the territory, around the legal limits of protected areas. But also protected areas are influenced by the social, economic activities. At the end, protected areas are privileged places to learn about and to act on climate change. So with this idea in mind, this project has 5 main goals and actions. First, to increase training on climate change adaptation measures. For that, we are going to develop a series of webinars, and this is the first one. Then to analyze in some detail the perception of stakeholders about climate change. Then we are developing a social research into pilot areas that I will present in a minute. Then we also want to involve, to increase the involvement of stakeholders. For that, we are developing a series of workshops to design adaptation measures with them. They will be the one who, based on their experience and needs, will develop these adaptation measures. We also want to recognize the efforts of those who are developing these innovative measures. So we will promote through an award and a public event the actions that we consider more innovative. And finally, we need to disseminate those lessons that we learn through the process, through the project. We already have a specific result. You can have a look in our website. We developed in a previous project a manual on how to integrate climate change adaptation in planning and management in protected areas. So now it's available both in Spanish and in English for those who are interested. So the two areas where we are developing this project are the National Park of Garajonay is in the Canary Island of La Gomera. It is probably the best example of a humid subtropical forest that is in itself is a relict example of a humid subtropical forest due to the climate conditions. Right now, this little island is here. You can see my screen. It is already affected by increasing waves of Saharan dust. They are also suffering the increase in temperatures, both at day and especially at night, increasing temperatures of the sea, etc. So this is a fragile ecosystem. The second area that we are going to work is it is called Sierra Espuña Regional Park. It's a nature park in the southeast Mediterranean coast in Spain, in Murcia. It is a forested area where it's interesting that it was a reforestation that you can see in the picture below. It happened at the end of the 19th century. Itself, it was an adaptation measure. They didn't call it like this, adaptation, but it really was, because they were suffering from the erosion effects and the effects of heavy rain. Like you can see also in the picture, more than 700 people died in a flood at the end of the century. So later, they began with this reforestation. What these two areas have in common, they are very much engaged in the European Charter for Sustainable Tourism. This is a program led by the Europark Federation. And in the context of this project, it is interesting that we have people, stakeholders already committed with the aims of the protected area. The conservation of these areas is very important for them, for their businesses. So in this project, we were lucky to meet face to face right 4 days before the lockdown in Spain due to the coronavirus pandemic. But we are ready to act. We are ready to learn from this webinar to keep going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marta. I'm sure we'll have many resources coming out from your project. But now let's hear from Kirsten. Kirsten, please share your screen. Kirsten has a long experience working in the National Park Services, and she will tell us how she is adapting the tools of the radical transformational leadership in her work.
Hello, everyone. First, I have to say, yay, we get to work from home. And there's construction happening outside my house, and so I am I'm sorry for the noise that is going to happen. I'm pleased to introduce you to Radical Transformational Leadership, or RTL, and it is a framework or methodology with specific tools and templates that were designed and developed by Dr. Monica Sharma over a 30-year career as an epidemiologist and a global expert in maternal mortality. And it consists of 40 tools and templates that includes the conscious full spectrum response model that sources our inner capacities, the greatness of who we are, to manifest change, embody universal values of dignity, compassion, fairness, and to simultaneously transform unworkable systems and cultural norms as we solve problems. RTL is subject agnostic, meaning you can use it in any sector. Dr. Sharma used these tools to treat and prevent HIV/AIDS in Africa, to protect women's rights throughout the Middle East, and to stop child trafficking in Asia. And today it's still used around the world in social, technological, and in the environmental sectors. I began using these tools in the National Park Service approximately 10 years ago to promote healthy ecosystems and a thriving workforce. And today I'm going to introduce you to two of the RTL, or Radical Transformational Leadership tools, and they're ones that you can start using today. So the first one is the Conscious Full Spectrum Response Model, and it really is the heart of the RTL work. And this model is a way of designing projects and programs to deliver results and to create enduring change. It's the enduring change that is really unusual. So there are three elements of this model. In the center, we have technical solutions or direct results that we need to create. It might be conducting a training program or an educational program. It's the stuff that we do every day, a fence that we might build to protect a riparian area. In the middle circle, here where it says systems and culture, we identify systems and cultural norms that maintain the status quo. So here we address law and policy that govern how we do our work. And we also include our mindset. So the systems that we look at could be anything from the healthcare system or the human resources policies, or it could be related to infrastructure. In the US, for example, electric cars are slow to take off, in part, not exclusively, but in part, but because we don't have charging stations. We don't have the infrastructure to be able to support them the way we do gasoline vehicles. And then the other piece that's part of this is culture, so our mindset. So sometimes we resist change because it's counter to our mindset. And just to give you an example of the power of our mindset is global hunger. So 22,000 people will die every day, mostly children, because of starvation. It's not a medical problem. We know that if you feed people, they don't starve to death. It's not an abundance problem. We have enough food for everyone. And it's not a distribution problem. We're able to get Coca-Cola to the smallest huts on every single continent. The global hunger simply exists because there's something in our thinking that it's okay for people to starve. And not enough of us put our foot down and say, you know, not on my watch will another person starve to death. And when we do, we'll solve global hunger. So this culture piece is really quite important, and you can't underestimate the resistances that we have in our culture to change. In the outer circle, these underlying causes are the universal values that we want to manifest through our work. Excuse me. Values such as dignity, equity, caring. So just imagine for a moment if our businesses operated in a manner that provided maximum benefit to people or to the environment, rather than maximizing profit. And so what we want to do is work across all three of these domains in every project. In green on this slide, I have added an example for a water conservation project. So let's assume that we're trying to reduce the amount of water that we use in our cities and our homes so that we can leave more water in the rivers. The universal value that we hold is respect or caring for all life. Life of nature, life of humanity, all of life. And so that serves as the foundation for everything that we do. In this center circle, where the technical solutions are, that could include anything from using low flow technologies, such as showers, shower heads. It could include capturing rainwater, or it could mean using household water in your gardens. It could also mean xeriscaping or using native plants. You simply need less water to support that. In the middle circle, we look at laws and regulations related to distribution of water or how much water you can use. We could also look at like building codes. Sometimes new construction requires use of low flow devices. So we look at those types of policies and cultural norms. So again, the importance is to work through all three of these domains simultaneously. Most of the time, unfortunately, we tend to respond partially or design partially. And the example that I'll give you is giant sequoia trees in the US. These are truly magnificent trees. They can be 100 meters tall, they're 10 meters wide, and they grow only in the Sierra Mountain Range in California. And I'm heartbroken to say that they're dying because of drought, stress, and other climate change related issues. And so to prevent the sequoias from dying, we're watering them. I mean, imagine a tree this size and how much water it needs. And we are in national parks watering these trees. We're not addressing any of the climate change issues. We're not addressing anything related to forest health. We're simply delaying the inevitable by watering the trees. And don't get me wrong, I do not want these trees to die. I would be heartbroken if you did. But I think you can see that this is a very short-term solution. It's a partial response.
Kirsten, can I just ask you to make the full screen presentation? Yeah, because we see it as a PowerPoint. It's just, it's better for visualization. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, thank you.
Okay. So our response is simply, we're working only in this center domain. If we were working in this middle cause, again, we would be looking at forest health, we would be looking at climate change. But we're just watering the trees. It's a very, again, short-term type of solution. I think in the effort of time or spirit of time, I'll skip the Grand Canyon example. And so at the beginning, I gave you the example of a full response of water quality, water conservation. And I'll show you another one, and that is reintroduction of bull trout, which is a threatened species. And it was extirpated or extinct out of much of its range in the northwestern US. And so we spent quite a lot of time looking, restoring one of the river systems that they were originally in. And so, excuse me. So we restored the ecosystem processes. We restored habitat so that it was able to support this fish and other native fish. And then ultimately we reintroduced bull trout into its native habitat. And the foundation for all of this was our deep care for life and the belief in a healthy environment. So we did everything that we could think of, or at least the technical solution of reintroducing the fish. We looked at the ecosystem processes to make sure they were intact so that the fish could survive in this river. The rivers that could support the fish for a longer period of time. So we were deliberately trying to create enduring change. And it's been about 10 years and the fish are doing great. Another human example is, so I lead the program called the Inventory and Monitoring Division. And so we monitor the condition of natural resources in parks, in 300 parks across the country. And so we hire a lot of field technicians to go out and collect data for us every year. And of course, we have to train them to do the measurements that we need and to follow our protocols. And so a few years ago, 5 years ago maybe, we started including the elements of the conscious full spectrum response into our training programs. So our underlying value, universal value that we were operating under is that we want to have a thriving workforce and a thriving environment. And so the technical aspects of the training is we needed to teach them our data collection procedures. We needed to teach them safety procedures. And so that was, and we conducted the training. So that was the center circle. While we were conducting the training, we focused on this middle circle by connecting their field work to conservation of park resources, We ask them what they deeply care about. So that's this outside circle. And we connected what they care about to the natural resources, to the resources in the parks, and to our Park Service mission. And we were hoping to have a higher level of engagement with our staff, and we did get that, but we also got higher quality of data, which we were not at all expecting. We also, they also started working with us, and on their own initiative, started working with us more on the reporting side, more on the analysis side. They were really eager to learn much more about the work that we do beyond measuring trees and collecting dissolved oxygen in water, for example. And so they were much more highly engaged than they had been in the past. And also we started, this is completely anecdotal, but we started getting feedback from them that they had decided to pursue careers in natural resources or master's degrees in something based on the experience they had with us. So that is the conscious full spectrum response model. The second one I will show you, the second tool of RTL tool that I'll show you is called Realize and Respond. And basically what this means is we respond to problems that come up, and then we also try and realize a future or a condition under which this problem would not arise again. That's the two elements of realize and respond. And the example that I have given you here is a human one. We did a survey in 2018, in the National Park Service, and discovered that 40% of our workforce had experienced abuse or harassment in the previous 12 months at work. And we responded in the typical bureaucratic fashion. We formed a committee, we issued new policy, we conducted training. And all of those things were directed or intended to stop the abusing and harassing behavior. Again, which is absolutely necessary. We must do that. What it did not do, this response, what this response did not do is to create an environment of respect, which is frankly the type of environment that I want to work in. And so using these tools, I created something called the culture of ongoing regard. And I've given you the definition of that. But essentially what we did is define what that looks like. And then everyone who went through the RTL programs that I lead, the training programs that we lead in the National Park Service, was asked to incorporate the culture of ongoing regard into their work. So every interaction that they have, they promote this culture of ongoing regard. Our safety, health, and wellness team works to create a culture of ongoing regard. It's built into our employee orientation programs. And so it's a grassroots response, or a grassroots way of creating the culture that we genuinely want to live in. And right now we have a couple hundred people working on this throughout our service. The last example that I will give you related to Realize and Respond is related to sea turtle hatching. So we have a number of threatened or endangered sea turtles that nest on our beaches and national parks. And we were having problems with people interacting and harming the turtles. And so we fenced off and closed the beaches when the turtles were nesting. We got a lot of pushback and complaints from the public that we were blocking their access to the beaches. And yeah, a lot of people were really mad at us. And so we started creating educational signs on the beaches, along the fence lines themselves. And then also we started creating displays in our visitor centers in the parks. And we even started creating and talked about the turtles and the importance of the time of their nesting and all that kind of stuff. And then we also had videos up of the sea turtles hatching and making their way out to the ocean. And we shifted the culture around people's approach to closing the beaches so much that we had people in the visitor centers like cheering for the turtles, go little turtle. And now we don't get nearly as much upset from the public whenever we close off the beaches. In fact, some of them think we should close off more beach on behalf of the turtle. So there was a switch there that happened. So those are the two tools that I wanted to provide, or that I wanted to show you. I hope you can now see. I've turned my, okay.
Yes, yes.
So in a few minutes, Conchi is going to present next. And then in a few minutes, we're going to ask you to look at one of your projects through the Conscious Full Spectrum lens. And so while we're changing over the screen and Conchi is taking over, think for a moment about what project that you would consider applying this Conscious Full Spectrum response to. Conchi, take it away.
Thank you, then. Well, yeah, I want to start sharing how or why we arrived to use this framework, the Radical Transformational Leadership framework. I am part of a cooperative that is called Altequio, and we work in different types of projects that promote resilience at a personal, organizational, and territory level. And we were looking for new ways of leadership that could create a bigger impulse for addressing climate change. And in this way, we found Karen O'Brien's work, which I'll start sharing my screen so you will see Karen O'Brien as a reference, yeah? Yeah, here it is. 1 second, and you will see it. Yeah, do you see it? Yeah, the screen, great.
Yes.
So Karen O'Brien, she's part of IPCC, and she's been also working on the Monica Sharma's framework, applying. And for me, it was very surprising that when looking for new ways, innovative ways, leadership, transformative leadership ways of addressing climate change, then Karen O'Brien emerged as this figure that is somehow creating a dialogue among science and practice, as she has been part of IPCC, and at the same time she has created also an organization that is called Sea Change, which is impulsing the training on this kind of framework, and the place where I was trained. And for me, it's inspiring the way that she also used the conscious full spectrum response. She used it to, she called it the 3 spheres of transformation. So it's like a different way of calling this, one of these tools that Kirsten just presented. And for me, the tool itself, maybe it was not surprising, like, okay, we have 3 spheres, we have different levels to address when we think about change or transformation. But what was inspiring for me was this idea of how worldviews or these values can have a deep interaction and influence on the other spheres. Like if a worldview doesn't see a practical solution or a system change as feasible or as possible, then this won't create a change, no? And this is an example, but then there are also other dynamics of transformation among the spheres which are very relevant. And therefore, I realized that we shared a paradigm with, or a vision with Karen O'Brien and Linda Signa, which is seeing this relational dimension of climate change as a key dimension that is not being addressed in many ways in climate change. So I like very much when Karen says, and we also say, but for us it was like finding a soulmate, that she says climate change is a relationship issue. So it has to do with the relationship with ourselves, the relationship with others, the relationship with other beings and nature. So this applying this idea of the relationship or the relational dimension to climate change is something that can inspire us to innovate in the way that we change in our projects. So yeah, so then through the training, we had this dream. We had a pilot project that was imposed by our cooperative, which was using a multi-stakeholders dialogue methodology that is called open forums. And this type of dialogues had a goal to open the conversation for different stakeholders to connect with this relational dimension, with this personal and emotional dimension of climate change, how climate change affects me, how do I relate to climate change, how does climate change affect my relationships, so that we can really connect what we do also to this personal relational experience. And this project was improved by using the tools and the templates that Kirsten was mentioning, the 42 templates that are part of the Radical Transformational Leadership. And I'll give some examples, because after this pilot project, we decided to impulse this kind of conversations as a project to introduce as much as possible in as many projects as possible as part of our commitment to this to this vision. So what are these? 1 second, let's see. I don't know why it's not. Yeah, it's here. What are these key aspects that we change from the experience of reflecting from the Radical Transformation Leadership framework? There are like 3 main areas that MOCA classifies these tools and templates, as far as I understood and learned, which one of them is embodying distinctions. So she has a list of the script, like a list of tools that are related to this idea of how to embody our values, how to live them, and from the personal experience, how to express this into the projects that we are doing. And for me, it was very challenging to understand that this was for us individually, for us as a team, and for everyone that is involved in the project in any way, as participants, as contributors, as collaborators, that we somehow share this idea that people, of course, people are not objects to change. Everyone is a change agent. So what we really need to do is to share the possibility to think together how to embody this change, how to apply it from the very email, from every email that we send, until every project or presentation that we do. And then the other aspect is the designing to make a difference, which was what Kirsten explained, how to apply these tools since the beginning in the design of the project, so that we make sure that the project is aligned to our values, aligned to the system transformation that we want to see. And this leads to very, very specific actions. So to really use, for instance, one of the other tools, which is called the Transformational Results Chain. It's a chain of results that you design from the biggest impact that you want to create until the everyday communication or everyday action, even management and bills. So how everything is related to that vision that you want to create, or to that impact that you are creating. And then finally, the other umbrella that somehow label another set of tools is this idea of practicing new processes, and how to integrate this practice every day. And I like very much that the framework and the training leads you to do mutual support and mutual learning in practices. It's like in peer groups, like in if it's like somehow a practice to share how to apply these tools every day. And I still have meetings every 2 weeks with my small team in which we support each other on how to apply this. And this means how to listen, how to generate conversations for action. There are very specific steps and suggestions to lead into action. Or, for instance, something that it has been very inspiring for us in the conversations, when we host these big conversations in which people are explaining how they are affected by climate change, there's always something that happens, and I guess in your daily lives happens too, which is complaints. People complain a lot. And I love very much one tool that Monica has, which is to search for the commitment behind complaint. So to really see and help the person, support the person to understand, I am complaining because I have a big commitment to something that I am not seeing or that I am not experiencing, that we are not reaching, and that's why I'm complaining. So this somehow is like a gate or a way to go for that vision, to go for that kind of transformation, and to support that person to step in their own leadership style and power to go for that. And finally, also to even, we are talking about climate change, not to forget all these social dimension, power dynamics, and disempowering isms like classism and racism and sexism and all these isms that create differences among people to to step for action, and differences in ways of climate justice also. So some of these are the examples of how to apply, how we inspired by the framework. And now let's go for action. Kirsten, over to you.
Oh, you are mute.
Sorry, I muted myself because of all the noise. So take the project that you started looking at before and that you listed before, share. Okay, we got it?
Yes.
And I've asked you a series of questions associated with each of the domains of the conscious full spectrum response model. So take a few minutes and consult and reflect on these questions in the context of your project, and think about how you might implement or design your projects a little bit differently in order to accommodate the three domains of the conscious full spectrum response. So in the outer circle, think about the universal values that provide the foundation for your project. What do you want to manifest through your work? We'll give you 3 or 4 minutes. And then we will put you into small groups to talk about what you wrote down and what you have learned about your projects, and applying this framework to them. So Barbara, I think in another couple of minutes, you can just put them into their groups of 3.
Yep, I am
and then we'll
just.
give them 9 minutes total, so 3 minutes to speak about what they wrote.
Mhm.
Okay. And then we'll bring them all back.
So maybe we just ask if anyone has any doubt before we move into the breakout rooms.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Should we give them the chance to see if is there any doubt before we move into the breakout rooms, or we move straight away?
Whatever you think is best.
Okay. Maybe you should repeat the questions. Okay. So maybe you can repeat the question.
Repeat the questions.
Yeah, that was a recommendation from Marta. But the questions were, well, I think everyone understands what are the objectives.
Okay, well, so the questions are on the slide. So for the center circle, what results will you create through your project? What'll be different as a result of your work? The middle circle, what systems are in place that maintain the status quo? And what cultural norms or mindsets maintain the status quo?
Mm-hmm.
And then what universal values provide the foundation for your project?
Okay. Okay, so I will assign you to the breakout rooms for 9 minutes. Well, meanwhile, there are people leaving, so there are groups becoming smaller. There will be some groups of 2 people, but I don't think that will be a problem. Okay, so we'll go now to the rooms and we'll bring you back after 9 minutes. So enjoy. From 5. Okay, there are people alone in the rooms because others are not going in. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is okay. Room 45.
Barbara, I can also join a room. Maybe
You can also join a room. Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
will go
you
to.
can.
Yeah.
I think Kirsten is in a room alone. Let me move it to room 33. Okay. Let's move it to room 34. Yes. Jorge. 28. So there is a lot of people who were not assigned to a room. George, can you see your room? Because I have assigned you to a new one now. No?
Where would we see that, Barbara, please?
It should appear in your screen, and you just go automatically in there. Unassigned. Let me see if you are in the unassigned list. No. So it says that you should be in room photon, not joined. So exactly, I'll put you in room 15. Okay. Does it appear now?
Nothing at the moment.
It says that you are offline. I don't understand why.
Maybe we can do it here.
Yes, well, yeah, of course. You can start. Both of you. Yeah, also because there are some people here, but I think they might be away from their tool. But yeah, Javier, Jorge, y Thotam,
Paul
you can
Hottam.
start exchanging.
I'm here too, guys.
Uh-huh.
Alex.
I ended up, I was in room 12 by myself. So
Yeah, I was in 14 by myself, so don't feel it was personal.
No, because you know, when I assigned, there were 180 people, and then suddenly
Yeah.
half of them went away.
Yeah, I spotted that.
Yeah.
So what do you need us to chat about, Barbara? Just what we reflected on our projects.
Exactly. How can you apply that to your own projects? So the idea was, okay, you bring in a project, and with this framework, the conscious, the circle, the 3 circles, you try to reflect on how you could change your project into that framework. So who would like to start from you?
I'll stick my neck out. We have projects focused on sturgeon conservation in the Caucasus, countries like Georgia. And we've been focused mainly on the conservation of the sturgeon itself in the river, but the whole issue has exploded and has become much wider. So if I put the 3 transformational levels, so level 1, the practical or the results created through the project, essentially we're looking to secure sturgeon as a species and sturgeon habitat. So that's practical, concrete conservation activities. And then the systems and cultures kind of, I couldn't decide whether you wanted to tell me what was bad or what was good. So for me, the systems and cultures supporting the situation of government policy and decision-making processes. And essentially the policies in Georgia are very much about nature being expendable and unlimited, and any impacts on biodiversity being long-term. So no impacts are seen now as far as the government are concerned, and that's what we need to change. We need to ensure that government and decision makers are aware of the decisions they're taking, how they impact on biodiversity, and at the higher level, the universal values that are the foundation of the project. I think the negative universal value is that man's domination over nature, and the perception that economy is always dominant over nature, development at all costs. Whereas the flip side of that level is really need to raise awareness and engage governments and decision makers around the value of ecosystems and the necessity of ecosystems for sustaining human life as well as biodiversity more broadly. In 3 minutes, that's what I came up with.
Very good. Okay. Yeah, the universal value there. I think it's across all our spheres of work in protected areas, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Alex, Jorge, do you want to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, what really resonates to me is like trying to go in our projects, try to go to a deeper level. Like we used to work more in a rational level, you know, like really going for the practical and the activities and that. But then I've seen many projects that when the project is over, that's part of the past. The change that it did is not like really big thing. It didn't need a system change. So to make these system changes happen, we really need to go deep, and to work with people's values and needs. And as Conchi was saying, really connect with the what is behind people's complaints and behaviors, and trying to understand what is people behave like that. So like trying to understand what is happening at the deeper levels, I think it can really make a difference in the impact on the projects.
And do you think by showing them, well, there is a universal value that actually unites us all, do you think this will make people change somehow their approach to it?
I think in the beginning, we can help people to realize that. Like maybe we have many values that we don't spend so much time in observe them, realize what do they mean to us, and like really get a bigger understanding of what that means in the practical way after in our lives, and in how we behave.
Okay, thank you. Well, meanwhile, our time is up. And well, I think we are all joined in already. Well, I have to tell you that something went wrong because we opened enough breakout rooms for 180 people and suddenly half of them disappeared. I think they were shy to go into breakout rooms. So that's why some of you ended up in a room alone. I'm sorry for that. That was not the idea at all. But well, in the end, we have also had a discussion with the few ones that were left alone in the room, and we had a small chat here. So I will pass it on to Conchi and to Kirsten to see how we move forward. Kirsten.
So we were hoping that a couple of you, 2 or 3 at least, would be able to talk about what changes or what you may incorporate in your projects, what you did during the breakout session, and then we will also answer any questions that you have. So would anyone be willing to speak about their project?
Yeah, I might just come in here. I was chatting to 2 people, one from Spain, Eva, who's working from an NGO, and another person from, apologies now, I forgot the name, who's doing a PhD study in Europe, but he's from Colombia, and working, trying to learn as much as possible about community engagement. The one thing that strikes us all is that the model that you're talking about, and especially when you come to systems and cultural changes, is the key is that you have to have as many stakeholders involved as well in your whole approach. You need multi-stakeholder and multidisciplinary on multidisciplinary levels to be able to make a success of this whole process of biodiversity change and climate change actions. Otherwise, we won't get there. And I understand that most of you operate within private, not in government parks and Natura 2000 sites, but a lot of people operate outside that as well, especially the NGOs and community groups.
So what did you learn about your project, and can you see how this may benefit your work using these tools?
The difference possibly is that every country, every situation, every project has their own set of issues that you can control, and some of the stuff that you can't control. And unless you have political will and political support in the broader system, a lot of these projects, you are basically just aspirational unless you have your stakeholders involved. And what you have to do is to get as many conversations going and listening to as many stakeholders outside your project and get them involved in your project. And that will lead to the success.
Kirsten, I'll just make an observation. In our little group that we chatted about, I was giving an example that George and Alex were nodding, I think, in agreement about how at level 2 and level 3, when you start talking about systems and value and cultural values and then underlying causes, you could start thinking about how society's treated nature as expendable and unlimited, something to be pursued and persecuted. And at the universal values level, you know, man's domination over nature and economy always being more dominant. And I think most of our projects, if they really go down to the underlying causes, they will get to that issue of the conflict between nature and culture and economy and the green devil, the dollar. But COVID-19, everybody's talking about a new norm moving forward, that people, or some people, have had a chance to reevaluate what's important about life, and some governments are even considering green pathways coming out of COVID-19. Maybe this is the time to embrace the whole narrative that we have had previously, actually. We were told 15, 20 years ago, stop with all the esoteric stuff, guys. People don't want to know that nature's beautiful and important. They want to know what it's worth, how much it costs if we don't protect it. And now that narrative is maybe shifting back to one of being based on a much broader set of values about the planet that we live on. Just as a thought.
I'm hoping we come out of this with more of that. I mean, I think many people are realizing, you know, I like the slower pace. I like having more time with my family. I'm hoping we get to the point where people are like, I like having fresh air, for example. And so I am really hoping that we, and doing my part to, you know, to speak and encourage to the extent that I can, recognizing, you know, we've seen a new side of nature, had a new experience of nature through this situation, pandemic. Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions?
I see there is a comment in the chat, and there is a question in the chat, and maybe we can also address this question. I will read it. Is, if you decide you need to work on the outer circle by talking about values with a group of stakeholders, such as farmers, would you do it explicitly? For example, do you say, let's talk about values, or do you just bring it in a more subtle way? Phil Holden brings this question.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that and then I can?
Well, you start and I complement, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
The way that I enter that conversation is I'll ask people what they deeply care about. Most people begin working in the science field or with protected areas because they love nature or love the environment in some way. And so help people reconnect to that. In the National Park Service, we have a mission that is so aspirational that it's very easy to commit your life to. And so if I'm working with fellow National Park Service people, I will connect back to our mission. So I don't necessarily say, so, you know, what do you stand for? But I will ask questions. If they're parents, I'll ask, you know, what sort of world do they want to leave for their children and their grandchildren? So I try and use questions like that as an entry point into what it is that we deeply care about.
Yeah, in the small group that I was with Ben from the Scottish Natural Heritage, and we were discussing about also this, how to bring these kind of conversations, or how to create questions that are engaging. And something that I really like is this kind of simple questions, like what do you deeply care for, that at the same time are a leveler in terms of power. And I like very much one example that Monica gave us during the training, that was explaining, for instance, if we are discussing about the type of education that we want, and in the room there are people with different professions that they care for their children, but they have a lot of differences because of their professions or their backgrounds or their ideologies, but all of them can make a consensus on what they all of them can speak about what they can deeply care and we can deepen that kind of conversation through facilitation. And at the same time, it's easy somehow to get this agreement on the type of values and education that we want to have. So yeah, I think it's also like a power leveler, which is something that we also aim for in these multi-stakeholder participation processes.
So, well, there is another question coming in the chat. And Elena raised her hand. Exactly, that was what I was about to say. So if you would like to make a question and make it more personal, you can raise the hand by going to the participants list in the bottom bar. And there you'll find a little icon where you can virtually raise your hand, and we'll give you the word, like I will do right now with Elena, and then I will go to the question of Lucian on the chat box. So Elena, if you can turn your microphone on, we would be glad.
Yes, hi everyone. First of all, I'm very impressed by the National Park Service work, as always. I have a question. You probably heard about the so-called golden circle, or start with why circle. Very much popular concept or model, especially in private sector in US. Popularized by Simon Sinek, and I can say that it's getting more and more popular here in Europe. Even public sector, regional government that I work for in Sweden is using the golden circle. Basically, similar idea, start with why, move to how, and then answer the what question. So I'd like to know if you're familiar with this model, what do you think about it, what is the difference, and what do we need to do to make it more popular in public sector, actually?
So I think it's Simon Sinek's work that has the start with why, I believe is what you're referring to. And I think that it's fantastic that they are using that and starting with the why, because that brings in more of the underlying values that we explicitly have. And then I think that it's incredibly important that we work toward. What's missing for me in that model is what we have described in the middle circle, the systems piece and the cultural norms. It's important that if we want our projects or our programs to endure for the long term, then we have to address that middle circle, the systems or the cultural piece, because that's where those are the circumstances under which we run out of steam. As you know, so many of our initiatives tend to fail, and it's often because we didn't address the status quo or the factors that are maintaining the status quo. And so I would say the two main differences between this model and theirs is the inclusion of the systems and cultural piece.
Perfect, thank you very much. And how to make it more popular in the public sector based on your experience?
Honestly, how to make it more popular is to continue to use it. We have, so since Monica retired from the United Nations, she's been training up leaders all around the world. These tools were developed in 60 countries around the world, and she continues to work on a global scale. And whether it's through Karen O'Brien's work, or there are people using it in the justice system in the United States, people are using these tools to fight homelessness, to fight juvenile violence prevention. It's being used in healthcare. So we're using it more and more, and being able to deliver results. So I think as we continue to use it, and as we demonstrate it as something that works, then it'll become more and more popular. As Conchi alluded to, the barrier is often practice. That's at least in the people that we've trained almost 200 people in the National Park Service and in other US agencies. And the training or the practice piece is really where we fall short. And if you think of athletes or anyone who's in the top 1% of their work, their career, their games, so to speak, the difference in the relationship between a professional athlete and everyone else is the level of practice.
Indeed. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is an interesting question from Lucian. And the question is there a clear rule on which level to start? Should we start from the outside of the circle, from the inner circle, or it depends on the cases? What are your ideas about that?
I think that you can start anywhere, wherever it is that makes the most sense. It really doesn't matter. What does matter is that you include all three of those domains. I typically start in the center circle because something comes up and I'm like, oh, I need to fix that. And so then I immediately start thinking about, what solutions are in place. But before I take action, I do always step back and look at at the middle and the outer circle, because oftentimes what I discover is that when I start looking, especially in the middle, the center circle, or the middle circle, I often find that there's something that I hadn't really considered. There's a context, or there's something that I hadn't considered. And so the action that I might take for the center circle may be different, or it might be structured differently, or I might include additional stakeholders, as Chris said, and as I make a response, or as I begin taking action.
And there is a comment coming from Phil regarding the previous question we've had. And you illustrated that, for example, in your work at the National Park Service, you are working with people who work for nature. So they have a common set of values, but how to do that in a multi-cultural or diverse group of stakeholders?
I would suggest that everyone has something that they deeply care about, whether it's the future that we want to give to our kids and our grandkids, whether it, I think everyone in the world wants to be able to thrive in some way. And so whether it's, whether it's creating justice, or it's eliminating inequality, I mean, there are things that everyone cares about. And the social issues that we have are not separate from the environmental issues that we have. From my point of view, it's the attitude of domination that we hold that creates many of both of our social problems and our environmental problems. And so I think there's a lot, when you start deepening the conversation and talking about what we really care about, I think you'll find that there's a lot more commonalities than there are differences.
So it's basically enabling people to reach out to that level that they might have been blind to it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's not the problem is not so much the difference of values, but scaling up, like our capacity to host that kind of conversations, so that we really train and practice on these skills, that we ourselves can connect with our values and speak about them and live them, embody them, and so that we can also invite others to do. So I think that's why for me it's so important to work on these more personal and social skills, because that's also very important. I think what I value is not only a theoretical approach that we are talking, the practical daily approach on how to ask questions, how to host conversations, how to deepen in questions. So it's that kind of invitation.
And even the tool that Conchi talked about before, the commitment behind complaint, that can be a great way to find out what people care about. Because if they're complaining about something, then you can speak to, and by the way, if you supervise people, this is one of the most important tools to be able to have in your tool belt. Because when people start complaining, you can speak to, or at least check in with them about, oh, I hear you, there's an issue of fairness, or something like that. And so people feel seen and they feel heard in ways that they don't normally. And it can also give you insight on what it is they care about.
Thank you, Kirsten. Well, there is not a question, but a comment from Sahid from Iran. And Said is complaining that in his country, people are suffering a lot with environmental causes, but the government seems not to give any answer to that. Maybe you can give him some inspiring words on how important NGOs and the grassroots work is.
So the program that I lead in the National Park Service is one of the largest that we have. And one of the most important learnings that I have had in bringing, balancing my role, my title, if you will, in the national parks, and also these tools and being able to balance those, we're able to distinguish between authority and influence. And I have discovered that I have far greater ability to create change if I'm working in a space of influence. And so the role that NGOs play, what you can do with connecting with your communities and the people that you work with, and to create a grassroots style movement is far more powerful than any solution or any authority. Like, for example, I talked about that culture of ongoing regard. If we had created a policy in the National Park Service that says we will have a culture of ongoing regard, just by my saying that, can you feel how flat and lifeless that would be? But it is a very vibrant and alive concept because we are doing it from a grassroots point of view. And so when you operate from a space of influence, you tap into people's passion, you tap into the potential that they hold, you tap into their creativity. It really is a much more empowering and vibrant space.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kirsten. Well, we are a couple of minutes from our from the end of the meeting. Well, we just have another question coming. National parks in Argentina. So they are developing their management plans in a participatory way that confronts different stakeholders in eternal meetings, endless meetings maybe. However, those meetings lead us to find out they all have some common interests, and from there we start working. So here is a good example on finding out the common ground. Maybe Soledad, if you want to elaborate more on that by turning on your microphone, you're invited to. And meanwhile, yes?
Hi, I'm Soledad.
Okay.
I'm in Nahuel Huapi National Park. It's in Patagonia, in Argentina. It's the first national park, kind of our Yellowstone. And well, from here, we started working with the participation of stakeholders so regarding to our national park planning. And well, I was meaning that they mean eternal reunions and meetings and discussions. And well, as Kristen says, eventually we get to a point where we all have something in common. Maybe coming from different interests, but it's the same goal. So from there, we start working in how to manage the area, which is a huge area. We have people living in, and we have natives. So we have cultural things going on here too. And so I agree, there's always a meeting point. There's always a common ground. The thing is, you get there by talking, just talking. It's a long process. It's been a long process here. We have a lot of stakeholders, but eventually you get there. So I think that's what I wanted to just share with you.
Thank you, Soledad.
Thank you.
Well, indeed, talking, but also the first part of talking is actually listening, right? So
Yeah,
that's the basis of it. Okay. Is there any other question or comment you would like to raise before we say goodbye to our speakers today? Okay. Okay, I give you some more minutes to think before we close. And let me just tell you some important things regarding the next Europark webinars. So this week is a very important week for all Europeans. It's the Europe Week on Wednesday. On Thursday is the Natura 2000 Day. On Friday is the Biological Diversity Day. And finally, on Sunday, it's the European Day of Parks. So if you do have a park, please join the celebration. We have a lot of tools, but the idea is that you show how your parks contribute to human health. And for that, you just need to celebrate with a post on social media and tag Parks for Health. We would really appreciate, because indeed, COVID-19 has shown us that more than ever, our health depends on healthy ecosystems. So building on this idea of healthy parks, healthy people, we invite you all to join us in this online celebration. This year, unfortunately, there won't be many live events. We will send you all the information in another email. Also, for those who speak Spanish, our next webinar will be on Friday, specifically focusing on this aspect. So we will hear how people depend on healthy ecosystems. We'll look at health and biodiversity, and you are all invited. And as per usual, Europark webinars are open and free to everyone. But the European Federation itself is a non-profit organization. So if you feel like you would like to contribute to the further discussions and to the further work of the Federation, you're very welcome to make a small donation. There is also all the information on our website. And well, we look forward to having you here in the next Europark webinar. Before we go, let's just look at the chat box, because I think there is a question coming and we still have 7 minutes. So Jorge asked, well, he sees people that go to workshops to work on these topics are very small in numbers compared to the ones that the media can reach and get messages contrary to nature conservation and climate change. How can we make this work at a broader scale? So how can we touch people's fundamental values, even if we don't have this possibility of interacting them face to face? What is the role of media here, or how can we make them work as our allies?
We definitely can. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I have introduced you to 2 of the 42 tools that are part of Radical Transformational Leadership. And there is another tool that we use that specifically engages media and talks about how we can use them as allies to promote the messages that we want to be able to deliver based on our values and based on the work that we're doing. It also, we also use media to, well, they're incredibly important in any culture shift work or mindset shift work that we need to do. So it's very important to incorporate and work with the arts community, the culture community, entertainment, anything related to that. So you have to sign up to learn more about that.
All right. Well, in the end of the, well, by tomorrow we will receive the recording and also the presentation of Kirsten, and I will harvest with Conchi and Kirsten some extra resources that you might be interested in, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be glad to send you further
Maybe
information.
Just the book.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah,
there is
also a book. So yeah. Yeah, you go ahead.
No, there is indeed a book called Radical Transformational Leadership. You can order it through Amazon or through any other book supplier and maybe get a better glimpse on it. But anyway, there are also trainings in Europe. The one that Conchi attended was in Sweden. It's actually a very accessible price for for-profit organizations. So if you feel like you would like to get deeper into the RTL tools, maybe this could be a good opportunity for you. Meanwhile, before you go, again, feel free to suggest us topics that we would like to see in the next webinars. We are always eager to go into new unexplored fields. And once more, thank you very much, Kirsten and Conchi and Marta, for putting this together with us and for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Well, this was just the little tip of the iceberg. And personally, I would like to do a lot of webinars on personal development and how we can really connect to what makes us act and change responsibly. So certainly with the co-adaptation project that Marta introduced us in the beginning, there will be more opportunities for that. And well, I wish you all a very good afternoon. And we will send the link to the book. I'm just answering someone who wrote on the chat, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you once more, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Vera. Cheers.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you soon.
See you soon.
Thank you. See you
Bye
soon.
bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, thanks.
Ciao, Jorge.
Bye and thank you.
Un beso para La Gomera.
Thank you.
Encantado. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Adiós.
Saludos, saludos a La Gomera. Lili, ya te has
Gracias.
ido.
Roger.
Chao, chao.
Roger,
Igualmente.
Gracias por todo.
Muchas